I mean, I don't know about you, but as someone who's been tracking the story, when we got that media alert over the weekend saying that there would be this press briefing between de Lille and Mmusi Maimane, I kind of feel like the last thing I expected was that she would resign. What was your feeling?
No, it does make a certain amount of sense. I think they've obviously done a deal, despite what Patricia de Lille says, and the parties come to the conclusion that this is the path to the quickest possible solution with the least amount of pain ahead of the elections and the next registration weekend.
You're saying the quickest solution with the least amount of pain, and yet so much damage has been done to the DA during this de Lille saga.
Yes, a huge amount of damage has been done, and I mean it's lasted 13 months of sort of attritional warfare between the two of them, which comes at a great electoral cost. These kind of fights drive up voter apathy. People get turned off, they don't want to vote, or they get turned away from the party, and that's all the more reason, I think, why the DA wanted to bring it to a swift conclusion.
Can you mark for us in the history of this 13-month spat the moment when things went wrong between de Lille and the DA?
Well, it's very difficult to determine a precise moment because there's so many different elements at play. You must remember there's a whole lot of party allegations against Patricia de Lille, and those are what have been dropped. But there's still concurrent to that a City of Cape Town investigation, and those have not been dropped. Bowman's is currently investigating those. They found a prima facie case of wrongdoing against Patricia de Lille, and there's every prospect that those will still be found to be damning, the findings, when they come out. And so with all these different component parts at play, it's very difficult to say when precisely it began or it went wrong, but it certainly did at some point or other.
So tell us about this Bowman investigation. What does that entail?
Well, it's an investigation into Patricia de Lille's financial conduct as the mayor. It essentially revolves around allegations of malfeasance. In other words, as mayor, she failed to properly investigate a whole series of allegations of wrongdoing to do with tenders and procurement. And she didn't act in accordance with her financial mandate as mayor.
So that investigation is still ongoing, and as you say, there was a prima facie, there was some evidence that led Bowman at least to believe that there is a case to pursue here.
Correct. There were a whole lot of affidavits tabled by senior officials in the City of Cape Town. Bowman's did an initial investigation into them and found that they constituted a prima facie case of wrongdoing, and they are now undertaking a full investigation into those allegations.
What's your sense around this talk that there was a vendetta against Patricia de Lille and that the DA was set on finding something that they could use to oust her?
Well, I think there's certainly some truth to the fact that politics did get intertwined with legitimate concerns to do with her leadership. If you look at allegations that came to light about upgrades to her private residence, those were proven to not be true and seemed to just be a sort of a smear, or at least used to up the political pressure on her. But on the other hand, there seem to be a whole lot of legitimate allegations against her, and there's going to be a real problem for accountability now. One of those is an SMS she allegedly sent to a MACO member instructing them how to vote for the next city manager. That is profoundly problematic, and we're not now going to know what the outcome of that was or whether she was responsible for it.
Now, we're looking at all of these developments in the governing party, in the DA, and other smaller parties as well, through the lens of elections 2019. All of these things work towards campaigning, which has already begun and many will say is already in full swing. And on the back of that, this issue that erupted also on social media around policy certainty around black economic empowerment. We saw a senior member of the DA say, no, we have not let go of black economic empowerment as the Democratic Alliance. And then MP Mike Waters responds and says, no, actually we have. What are voters meant to make of this?
Yes, it's been very badly handled by the Democratic Alliance, and they need to clear it up as soon as possible. Essentially what was said originally was that the party's federal council had met, which is the party's highest decision-making body, and they had made a unanimous decision to abandon BEE as a model of empowerment and to pursue a different model of empowerment that they believed worked better. There was then a fallout over that, and some members said we didn't vote for that. But I suspect the confusion all has to do with BEE. And a lot of those party members have misunderstood what happened and think that the DA is abandoning an empowerment altogether, whereas what it's actually saying is we're moving away from one model to another model. But we're still fully invested in trying to come up with some kind of alternative model that benefits the most people.
And this issue of black voters that has come up in light of the Patricia de Lille saga, things like this, policy certainty and communicating that properly to your electorate. I mean, we're on social media, we're monitoring these discussions, we can unpack it, we can speak to the likes of you. Ordinary voters are looking at the face of the argument and saying, well,
yes, these issues
don't understand.
they're very complex and they confuse voters more than clarify things. And the whole situation for the last 18 months has been exacerbated by the huge number of internal fights that the DA's had. It has been unable to deliver a clear message on issues that matter to voters without contradicting itself, without being distracted by some kind of internal furore. It needs to put all that stuff behind it desperately. It needs to talk about the issues that matter to voters, the economy, education, crime, corruption, in a clear way without any obstacles if it's going to have a successful 2019 election campaign.
Yeah, and that would be your advice to the Democratic Alliance going to 2019 if it wants to hold on, especially to the Western Cape?
Yes, absolutely. It needs to start to talk about and exclusively about those issues that matter to voters. It needs to put to bed all these internal fights. It needs to unify behind its leader and behind a campaign message, and then it needs to deliver on that message.